If you're enjoying this podcast from us here at Witch, then why not become a Witch member? Right now, we've got a special offer, especially for podcast listeners, meaning you can choose any of our 3 membership tiers for 50% off the usual price. Starting at just £39.50 for a full year, you can get Witch magazine delivered direct to your door. For the same price, you could also choose a digital Witch subscription, giving you access to all of our product reviews, the Witch app, and the digital edition of Witch magazine. What's more, you'll also be able to use the Ask Witch service for personalised one-to-one buying advice. Or why not get a full access Witch subscription for just £49.50 for a full year? Don't forget, that's 50% off the usual price. To join Witch or to find out more, just head to witch.co.uk/podcast offer. That's witch.co.uk/podcast offer, or click the link in the description for today's podcast for 50% off a Witch annual subscription.
AI, or artificial intelligence, a useful tool to make our lives easier, or technology providing a helping hand to fraudsters. Welcome to Witch Money. Hello, it's James Rowe in for Lucia Ariana this week, and today we're hearing how, 2 years on from the launch of ChatGPT, AI is increasingly being used by fraudsters to develop scams both old and new. Now, later in the show, we'll be joined by technology journalist David McClelland, but first we're joined in the studio by Witch scam expert Faye Lipson. Hello, Faye.
Hiya.
Great to have you back on the podcast. It's been a little while, but great to have you back. Is AI and artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and all this sort of thing just sort of another step in the direction of scams developing in this sort of day and age?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think the key point to remember really is there's nothing really new under the sun. So what I think we're seeing is some of the same classic scams that we're very familiar with already on this podcast, but have kind of been turbocharged in a way by some of this technology that just is kind of reducing the barriers to entry and making it easier than ever for lower and lower skilled fraudsters to actually pull these off.
Because you're looking at scams and fraud day to day here at Which, you're seeing how they develop and you're coming up with the best possible advice. And then I guess, do you almost think, okay, well, we're done with that scam and then something else develops and now we've got to adapt everything?
Sure. So it goes in cycles. So there'll be, a big surge in purchase scams for a bit. It might die down, and then a new type of technology or an enhancement in technology will kind of make them easier to achieve again, and then you see another surge in them, and it just goes round and round. It's like, the phrase whack-a-mole gets used so much in fraud, but it's true.
It definitely does seem like that. And you've written a great piece for the next issue of Witch Money magazine. Witch Money members, this will be landing on your doorstep very soon. I want to touch on romance fraud to begin with. This is something we did on the podcast back in February to tie in with Valentine's Day, actually. We pop a link in to go and listen back to that one. Remind us what romance fraud is all about. How does this one work?
Sure. So this is, a particularly nasty type of scam in terms of the emotional damage that's done to victims. But essentially, the fraudster will make a person believe that they're in a romantic relationship with them, and they'll use this relationship to kind of extract money from the victim using all kinds of methods. They might use kind of sob stories about, tragedies in their life, or they might, for example, say that they've got some brilliant investment opportunity that you simply can't miss out on. But however they do it, they really trick people into thinking they're in a long-term romantic relationship when they're not, and the results when they discover the deception can be absolutely devastating for people.
And this is people sort of hiding behind a WhatsApp number or maybe an email or a social media account. They'll never do a video call or an audio call with somebody. They'll just do it via text, and somebody believes that they are going into a new relationship with somebody.
Sure. So audio could be a bit easier for a fraudster to carry off. If they're doing video, it potentially might be with an actor or an accomplice or something. But yes, reluctance to kind of meet up in person, or reluctance to take things off of a messaging app, for example, can be a a sign of a romance scam, most definitely.
And romance scams in 2025 developing, aren't they, with the thanks to AI? How are fraudsters using that to their advantage now?
Absolutely. So to rewind the clock slightly, we did a feature on AI a couple of years ago in which an expert predicted that at some point you would actually have chatbots plugged in to conversations with unwitting victims so that you could be corresponding with a chatbot without even realising it. And that was a prediction, but the antivirus company McAfee is now saying that that's a reality. They've seen evidence that people are interacting with chatbot fraudsters, essentially romance fraudsters that aren't even a real person. It's they're being romanced by a chatbot without even realizing it.
And what are the signs then? Because I guess when you're doing it with a person or somebody is actually on the other end, it's not the person you expect it to be, but it's somebody. When it's a chatbot, there must be signs that it isn't actually a person if you're looking at the right thing.
Sure. So it's really tricky because the conversation can flow quite naturally a lot of the time. But some of the things we were told to look out for was, for example, a chatbot can just operate 24/7. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't need to go to the toilet or cook dinner or anything. So if you're just getting flawless instant responses all round the clock, then that could be quite suspicious. And another one that you can sort of try out, I was told by an expert at McAfee, is to kind of throw in a really random question that's nothing to do with what you're talking about, like, what's the weather like today? And a chatbot might just answer you, whereas a real person would be like, well, that's a bit random. Like, what? Why are you asking me that? So these are all things to try, basically.
So it's always worth being aware of what's going on and almost trying to, like, snoop them out, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's subtle. So, sometimes the chatbot might kind of slightly miss the emotional tone of the conversation, but it's really they can be really quite good. So yes, it's not always easy to tell.
Let's do investment scams. Before you tell us about how they've sort of developed with AI, remind us what investment scams are all about.
Yeah, so this is where people are basically tricked into pouring their money into an investment scheme that doesn't exist, and the really classic ones that we've seen in recent years have involved things like cryptocurrency, and binary options was another one that was big a few years back, and non-fungible tokens, NFTs. So those are quite common, and we've seen these for years in various guises.
And in the past, we've seen these being used with celebrities and their identities without their knowledge. It almost gives them an air of authenticity, but it just makes it easier for scammers to lure people in.
Yeah, absolutely. So the classic investment scam that I can picture from maybe about 6 or 7 years back was Deborah Meaden from Dragon's Den. There would be this really weird sort of photoshopped image of her and a fake news article about how you should fill in a web form and invest in something that Deborah Meaden's endorsed. It's totally fake, nothing to do with Deborah Meaden, and she's been really clear about that. But it's come such a long way now because you have deep fake videos, which, although they can be slightly jarring, the good ones are really quite hard to detect, and the movements and speech of the person can look quite natural, and the voice can be cloned as well from actual recordings of that celebrity speaking, so that the voice sounds accurate. And it can then be really hard to tell if you're watching one of these deepfake videos of a celebrity selling an investment scheme. It can actually be quite hard to tell that it's fake. But sometimes the speech and the lip movements are just ever so slightly out of sync. Sometimes with audio, there can be a slight metallic sound in the background. Sometimes, like, just very small details like hair or ears just don't look entirely right. But so there are small signs, but the good ones are really good.
Let's move on to a group of scams called purchase scams. Again, remind us about this one.
Yes, so it's quite common for websites to spring up that look like a legitimate shopping site, trick you into getting your payment details and nothing arrives. Sometimes a really, really low quality item might arrive.
But certainly not what you expected.
Exactly, yeah. So a common way that people find these fake, these kind of fraudulent shopping sites is through adverts on social media.
Yeah, I feel like we've all heard of somebody who's sort of fallen foul to one of these, because they can, on the surface of it, they can look quite realistic. And if there's a product on there that stands out, you might just think, oh, well, here it is on a social media site. It looks legitimate. You click buy and then you never see your money again.
That's it, yeah.
But now they're becoming a bit more difficult to spot the real from the fake.
That's right. So it used to involve kind of a little bit of effort, whereas now there are kind of website builders, many of them completely legitimate, I might add, that are used by genuine companies. But all you need to do is kind of input a few very basic prompts like online upmarket fashion boutique or something, and it will generate for you an entire design with fonts, colours, layout, everything, and like stock images of how a site might look. So it's incredibly easy.
And you became a fraudster for a day as well, didn't you? You made it. You showed just how easy it can be to set up these websites.
Sure. So yes. So just by entering a few prompts, we were able to get a really nice looking fashion boutique that we obviously have no intention of actually uploading. But if we had such an intention, it wouldn't take us very long. And certainly if I was a customer looking for kind of high-end fashion and I'd found this website, I would be quite convinced by it. I think it looks completely genuine. And that's the thing, really. These tools can go either way. They're used by genuine firms and they can be used for fraudulent purposes as well.
And with the authenticity of scams, so many more of them now look so much more professional and realistic. And phishing scams is another one where you get sent an email and it gives you a bit of a dodgy link and a lot of people click on them. In the past, you might have been able to spot a spelling mistake, or you might have seen something that just doesn't quite look right, where it looks a little bit off. But now with chatbots, scammers are able just to sort of put in a prompt, get a full written copy for an email. They send it out and it looks even more realistic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. So to give you an example of this, we actually tried this out. So there were some reports recently that there are a lot of bailiff scams circulating where people are receiving fake debt demands for debt they don't owe. So we asked a chatbot to generate like a professional sounding email that explains that bailiffs are coming to visit a person's home and collect an unpaid debt. And we asked it to reference UK laws. And it did. It created a really, really convincing looking, quite lengthy email that quoted from laws that I myself, as the person prompting the chatbot, hadn't heard of, didn't know about. And I can totally imagine somebody receiving it and being really alarmed by it.
Before you leave us then, Faye, what would you say about advice for spotting scams? Because definitely in the past, I'm sure it was easier because there were these errors, mistakes to spot, but now they look so much more authentic and realistic. How does your advice change on staying aware and spotting them?
So a lot of that advice that you mentioned is out of date. So, for example, looking for spelling mistakes and weird translations and so on. It's just you may see the odd example of that still, but the absence of it doesn't mean something's genuine. So things have really moved to a much more fundamental level. I think people need to be have an overall attitude of skepticism to anything they really receive. And the question that needs to be at the back of your mind all the time is, how do I know this is genuine? How could I verify this? If something's asking you for your personal details, your banking details, payment details, you really need to be thinking, how do I know that this is genuine? What could I do to check and verify? And if you have, a known means of contacting the legitimate organisation, then you should do.
Sound advice. And if I can give one piece of advice as well, is to sign up to the Which Scam Alert newsletter as well. We'll pop a link to that in the show notes for today's episode. Faye, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem.
Great to have you here. Stay with us, though. After the break, we'll be joined by tech expert David McClelland to hear more about what's next for the mysterious world of AI.
Leaking roof? Car won't start? Needs to renovate? Here's what to look for when getting a trader to help. A recognised endorsement, where expert assessors set the bar high. Genuine customer reviews, so you don't get duped by cowboy fakers. A clear code of conduct to give you an extra layer of security. A robust complaints policy, so you can resolve disputes fairly. And the Which Trusted Trader badge that says, choose me with confidence. You can trust Which to help you find the right traders for the job. We run thorough checks on traders, put them through in-depth assessments, then we give them the actions to make improvements and only endorse them when they've actioned them and made the grade. So, to choose with confidence, head to which.co.uk/traders or search for Which Trusted Traders.
Welcome back to the show. I'm pleased to say that technology journalist David McClelland is now joining us. Hello, David.
Hello there, how are you doing?
I'm all good, thanks. Brilliant to have you with us. We were talking in the first half with Faye about the changing face of scams and fraud thanks to artificial intelligence. Just how much easier is it now for scammers to scam us thanks to AI?
Yeah, there's a few ways of looking at this, and in some ways it's a case of same old scams, but super powered and scaled up by all new technology. And AI really is a catalyst, you could put it, but AI is a power tool that can be used for good or for bad. And depending upon whichever industry you work in, there'll be people who are very fearful of what AI can bring. But then there are also those who are saying, no, just imagine if you were a tradesperson and you didn't have a power tool, you know, an electric drill or a jigsaw or whatever power tool floats your boat. AI is very much like that, but in the digital realm, and it enables you to do things that would have either been impossible before or just be very difficult before or would have taken a long time to do. AI enables things to happen at scale and to be automated in a way that was never possible before.
And what's new now about AI and scams is that in the past, before AI was involved with scams and fraud, is that it didn't necessarily take a whole lot of skill but potentially a lot of effort, but not a lot of skill, with so many mistakes in text or spelling mistakes and that sort of thing. But now it doesn't really require a lot of skill anymore. You can almost just press a button and it does what it wants you to. So it opens the world up to scammer. It opens the door to even more scammers, doesn't it?
Yeah, so particularly at an organised crime level there, AI, it lowers the barrier to entry. It lowers the cost, and it means that criminals can operate coordinated phishing and fraud operations with a few clicks of a button or taps on a screen or strokes on a keyboard. And it makes things like cybercrime as a service easier. Again, looking particularly at the kind of fraud that we see invading people's inboxes. Yes, sometimes it is a bad actor, but more often than not, it is farms of criminals who are trying to attack as many people as possible in the hope that even a fraction of a percentage come good, that will still be a good profit for them. So AI enables people who don't have a technical background all of a sudden to write code. You know, we talk about AI as being this amazing thing at generating text through tools like ChatGPT, or generating images or mimicking voices and so on. But actually, where generative AI is really, really strong is in writing computer code. I could generate a website. I could generate a piece of code to do almost anything that I wanted without really knowing a great deal about coding. And that is one of the ways in which criminals who don't have a technical background are now able to execute campaigns that might otherwise have required certainly a good degree of experience in computer coding.
And in terms of visual generative AI for pictures and particularly video now, we were chatting to Faye in the first half about how scammers can now use a piece of video of somebody that makes it look like it's a celebrity trying to get you to sign up to some sort of investment scheme, for example. And that doesn't take a lot of effort either, does it? But how are scammers actually doing it? What are they doing, and how are they doing it to try and dupe us?
Right. Okay. I can talk about this with some degree of experience here. We talk about deep fakes, but we don't hear so much about shallow fakes. And a shallow fake is essentially the same thing. It is passing off a person as someone who they're not, or putting words into their mouth, if you like. And when you think to maybe 10 or so years ago, the most deep-faked person on the planet, he would call himself Martin Lewis, that money-saving expert. He was having a lot of news articles that were a still image taken out of context and put in a fake news story, for example. I was also the victim of one of these. They took something from some TV show that I was doing and they put it on a news story, and it was me peddling a cryptocurrency scam.
Wow.
Now,
and how does that feel, David, for you very quickly? Sorry, David. How does that make you feel then? Because you're the victim in a different sense, aren't you?
Yeah, you have no control, absolutely no control over this. I remember it was a Sunday morning and I got some messages from my friends with screenshots saying, David, do you know that these images are out there? And it was across Reddit, it was across Twitter, I think it was across Facebook as well. And I had no control over these images of me from a well-known breakfast show here in the UK, having words put into my mouth. I feel helpless. I felt as though all the trust that me as a consumer journalist had built up was potentially being eroded. And what can you do? The best thing you can do is fight back. So I put something on my social media. I put something on my website to say, this is not true. It is not me saying this. But that's got nothing to do with AI, but it took people in. Then you fast forward a few years, it's not good enough to have that still. You take a piece of footage of the celebrity, and to begin with, it was some fairly simple digital manipulation, the shallow fake stuff that didn't necessarily rely on AI, but it was just good enough that it would lure some people in. The face might be looking in one direction, the mouth might be looking in another, but by making it look as though it was on a poor quality film camera, as we got used to during the pandemic over Zoom calls and other online conferencing stuff, it was enough to take people in. And then fast forward to where we are right now, and it is pretty trivial to train a model, an AI model, on someone's face, on someone's body, just give them enough footage and it will be able to recreate that person's face, that person's voice, saying whatever it is that you want them to say. And criminals are able to do that and are luring in more victims by doing so. It's not just financial fraud, I should say. It's also being used for political motivations as well. So it might be politicians. We've had a couple of cases in the UK with our current Prime Minister and with a last Prime Minister as well. Social media particularly being used as a mechanism by which incorrect messaging can be shared. And we've also seen it in the US as well with presidents and high-profile people, just to try and shape the political discourse there. It is a case that seeing is no longer believing when it comes to deepfakes, I'm afraid.
Can we chat about chatbots as well, because scammers are able to use these to their advantage? There are a lot of positives to using AI machines like this, you've already mentioned. But what does the future hold for this kind of thing? Because there are benefits, as we say, but clearly there are a lot of negatives and a lot of bad actors who are using them to their advantage. So what's the future? Is there regulation, or what's meant to happen?
Bots are one of the main ways in which people are able to engage with generative AIs at the moment, and that is the Microsoft Copilot that might come with the Office software that you use on your laptop, or you might go to the ChatGPT, the OpenAI website, or Gemini's is Google's version, and Claude and Perplexity. There's so many different versions of the well-known chatbots. And, well, yes, there is a kind of centralization of power here. These are big companies who invest a lot of money in training these models and making their services available to everyone. And there are certain guardrails in place that will do their best to make sure that illegal information isn't available, or is at least very, very hidden away. However, that's not the only way or those chatbots aren't the only ways in which we can engage with an AI. And it's possible to create your own chatbot trained on data that you have. So training data is the information that you feed to an AI model, and garbage in, garbage out, as we used to say in computing. And if you're feeding it with a certain amount of it, with certain information, that's what you will get back from it. I can create a chatbot on my laptop, and I may have fed that chatbot illegal information on anything illicit that you wanted to find online or whatever, really. I could train that and I could query it and I could use that completely frozen out from the internet. So there is no controls. To your answer on regulation and guardrails and controls here, if I'm training my own AI model with data that I've provided it with, the authorities ain't ever going to see that, frankly. And bad actors will almost certainly be doing that as well. But they don't necessarily need to be doing stuff on their own laptops. You know, I can ask a very well-known chatbot right now how to craft a phishing email, or how to create a website that is an exact copy of a well-known retailer's website, and then ask it just to adjust some of the code so that when I click on that form, it's not sending money to a retailer, it's sending money into a bank account that I own, or sharing personal information with me. Some of this stuff can hide in plain sight, and it's about what we call prompt engineering in some ways. And this is the queries that you ask a chatbot. You can try and hide certain actions from a chatbot if you are the owner, administrator of that chatbot. But criminals are very good at prompt engineering their way around some of those controls so that they can get out exactly what they want to put in. In the same way that scammers are great at social engineering humans, the prompt engineering scammers are very good at sort of social engineering the chatbots to make them do whatever it is that they want them to do.
David, can you tell me some benefits of AI then? I feel like we've spoken so much about the negatives and how scammers and bad actors are able to use them to their advantage. But what about to our advantage? How is AI making our lives a bit better?
There's definitely an extent to which AI is a double-edged sword. And if you look at this metaphor of AI as a power tool, it does enable you to do stuff that either you couldn't do before, or maybe it would have taken you a long time to do before. So, for example, I can talk about how I use AI, for example, and I use AI sometimes to summarize some research documents. And if there's a lot of information, I can essentially sort of train an AI model on 4 or 5 big documents that would take me a week to read, frankly. I can get it to summarize, understand, and I can then query that model so that I can get the salient points. Give me the 5 big talking points, or give me the 5 pieces of novel information from these 8 research documents, please. And if you want to take it to the next level as well, I can create a podcast. Now, I know I'm talking to you over the medium of podcasts here, but using a tool like Google provides, Google Notebook, Google LM, I can ask it to create a 20-minute podcast that is a conversation between 2 people based on some information that I share, that I've provided it with. My final point on how to think of some of this technology, and it's actually a quote that I found from someone who did a lot of thinking about technology, Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and other books like that. He talks about how we humans think of this new technology, or think of new technology as a whole. And first of all, he says that anything that's in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary, just a natural part of the way in which the world works. Then, anything that's invented between you're 15 and 35 is new and exciting and revolutionary, and you can probably make a career out of it. And then the bracket age-wise that I fall into, unfortunately, anything that's invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things. And I think for a lot of people, certainly over 35s like me, although I try to think of myself as younger, it's very easy to look at this technology, and it really is a revolutionary technology, I would say, like generative AI, as something that feels against the natural order of things. But I've got kids, I've got a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, and using little AI tools, maybe not even in the big ways that we've been speaking about, but, just to help them rewrite a sentence or just to help them understand something. We'll have a chat with ChatGPT to understand about Alcatraz, the prison, is something we did the other morning when that was in a news story, and learn a little bit about the history of that. That is the natural order for them, and that is absolutely what it's going to be. There ain't no going back. AI is as bad as it's ever going to be. It's only going to be getting more useful for us. So it is this double-edged sword, but I think we have to embrace it going forward rather than sticking our head in the sand and pretending it sort of doesn't exist.
David, I asked for the good things about AI, and you're going to suggest that I might be out of a job, that it can do podcasts for us, and I'm going to be here without anything to do. But I'm sure there are still plenty of other positives. Should we wrap up with any advice on how to stay ahead of scammers now that they are using AI?
Yeah.
Or when I ask you that question, by the time you've answered it, is that going to be out of date by then?
I think that certainly with the generative AI capabilities now, there is no excuse whatsoever for a scammer's email, and let's extend that to websites, any other text. There is no excuse for it to have any spelling mistakes, any grammar mistakes. So I don't think that we can use those alone now as an indicator as whether something is real or is trying to lead us down the garden path. And then extending this into the deep fakes that we spoke about as well. You can look at some of the deep fakes that you can see online, and certainly in some of the news stories that we see. And you can see that maybe the eyes aren't quite right. Maybe some of the writing, if there's any writing in the image as well, or maybe the mouth isn't quite moving as you would expect, or maybe the vocal intonation is a little bit flat and not what you would expect to hear from that person. Right now, I would say that they are all very useful tells, if you like, that it might not be what it seems. But AI is as bad as it's ever going to be. It is getting better. It is improving in its accuracy, in its ability to create convincing fakes, whether that's words or pictures, at a hyper exponential rate. So I don't believe we can rely on looking for those visual tells anymore. And while there is software, and while we're also using AI to detect when AI has generated an image or generated words, I feel that's always going to be one step behind. So my piece of advice, if I could boil this all down to one piece of advice, it's this. And it's a concept that we talk about a lot in IT and kind of business technology speak. But I believe it's as important now when we're talking to consumers and general public. And it's called zero trust. And it has a mantra. And that mantra is never trust, always verify. Ask yourself, how can I independently verify what it is that I'm being told here? Seeing is no longer believing, so you need to be able to find another channel through which you can irrefutably confirm what it is you're being told.
Never trust, always verify. It's 4 vital words that we can take away from this. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers.
Every year, Which tests thousands of the products that you rely on every day. And we've been doing it for over 60 years.
Which reviews are 100% impartial. We don't accept freebies from manufacturers, and we have no owners, shareholders or government departments to answer to. So our work is on behalf of you, the consumer.
In a world of misleading claims and fake reviews, we test everything, from everyday items to big purchases, so that you don't have to.
We then put them through tests and assessments that go beyond the accepted standard to work out how well these products work for you and what's not worth your money. And a Which membership not only gets you access to our reviews, it also funds our non-profit campaigning work, like getting scam ads banned on social media and ending broadband and mobile mid-contract price hikes. And right now, podcast listeners can become a Which member for 50% off the usual price by heading to which.co.uk/podcast offer.